guys. Let me get rid of that pipe. I've been switching over smoking pipe a little bit, trying to get rid of cigarettes. I was watching Nona Grace today, and she was talking about things we used to do as kids and things that they can't do or don't do nowadays. And she was talking about stilts. I remember we used to build our own stilts as kids, and we'd sit on the back of the house because they'd be so high, 8 feet in the air, and we'd sit on the back of the house to get up on them. Our mom and dad never stopped us. They always said, you know, if you fall and get hurt, it's your fault because we warned you. And I mean, they didn't micromanage us. We went out and played, and we did whatever pretty much we wanted to do outside. They didn't worry about it. And you know, one time, well, when I was a kid, my mom's brother and his family, he had 11 kids. There was Lonnie, Connie, Ronnie, Bonnie, Mikey, Rosie, Elizabeth, John, Joan, Jane, and Bobby. Of course, John, Joan, and Jane were triplets. And when I was a kid, we all went camping together, and we'd take 3 trucks. And the kids, all the older kids, rode in the back of one truck, and one truck was for hauling all of our camping gear and all that, because there was 7 kids in my family and 11 in theirs, and then there was 4 adults. So it took that much to get there. And we used to go to War Eagle River to a place called Old Man Goss's. There was no farmer that owned it, and you used to have to go down his driveway, and it was just an old-time farm, and you could go this way and go down to part of the river, or he had a gate here, and there was a big field out there, and there was a road alongside of his field, and you could go through the gate and drive down that, and it was just right at the river. There was rocks up, big giant rocks up here, and then it came down and turned into flat land. And then when you came back up about 50 feet, it'd start going up into a big field. And there was trees all along there and big river bank. And across the river, it was just giant bluffs. I mean, giant bluffs. So you were pretty private down there. But he'd charge you 50 cents, and you could stay the whole weekend. 50 cents a carload. And that's where we went. And we never took tents and camp stoves and all of that. We took... Mom and Dad would get an old grill out of an old stove or an old refrigerator. They'd take cast iron skillets and coffee pots and all of that. And we never took tents or anything. We didn't take sleeping bags. We took blankets and pillows, and all of us kids, Mom and Dad would take a little old thin mattress or something. I mean, they were older. They couldn't sleep flat on that ground. Of course, my dad never slept the whole time. Pretty much we were there anyway. He was always fishing. But the men would go off fishing, and the women would set up camp, and the kids would go off playing. We'd go swimming, whatever. And they would cook our meals on put that grill from an old stove. They'd build them a little rock fireplace and put that grill on it, and that's how they cooked. And the men would be off fishing. And we was quite little. Me and my cousin one day, we used to take jugs, and up at the farm, which wasn't maybe a quarter of a mile up the hill to back up to his farm. So me and my cousin, we'd get jugs and we'd go up there, and he had a faucet, an outside faucet right in the middle of his yard. And that's where we'd get our water. Mom and Dad would send us up there to get water. And one day, my cousin and I went up there to get some jugs of water, and old man Goss come out there. He was probably 70s, 80s at that time. And he came out there and he said, boys, and he had this big egg, huge egg, and he gave it to us, and he said, now, I want you to take this down and tell your mama that she is to cook this just for you 2 boys. He said, I found this egg in the fork of that tree up there. He said, you tell your mama my prize rooster got up there and laid that egg, and I want you boys to have the first egg that my rooster laid. Oh, we were so happy. We protected that egg, got it back down there. We told her the story. And of course, right off, my mom, if we hadn't had a story, she'd have thought we stole the egg from the old man. But she knew right off when we told her the story that he was playing a joke on us. And at the time, we was too young. We didn't know he was playing a joke. We go down there so proud, telling Mom that he gave us his first egg that his rooster laid. My mom and my cousin's mom was laughing their guts out, my dad, and we could not figure out. We knew something was wrong, but we did not know what it was. But they never told us. They never told us. And so every time we'd go down there during the summer to go camping, the first thing us boys would do is ask him if he had any rooster eggs. And we never could figure out why everybody laughed at us. But after we got to be teenagers, we realized what he'd done, that roosters don't lay eggs, and that what he had given us was a big old duck egg. And he just thought it was funny to trick us kids like that. And he knew our parents were going to laugh at us when we took it down there bragging about this big rooster egg that old man Goss had given us. But it was fun. It was fun. But you know, that place, we went there almost every summer, and that place, a lot of things happened there that really stuck with me my whole life. Like down where the river went around like this, and the mountain was on this side, bluffs. Over on this side, you could cross the river, and there's like a little small field over there. And the farmer over there, he used to cut grass, and he'd bring it down there and pile it up. I bet that hay pile was probably 16 feet wide and 10 feet tall. And he'd do that so the wild mountain goats and stuff up on the bluffs would come down there and eat, or it would bring the deer and stuff in and give them something to eat. And of course, you know, groundhogs and rabbits and stuff like that would go in it and make a home. And one weekend we went down there, and it had just started turning dark when we got there, and some teenagers had been over there drinking and going on, and they'd set that hay pile on fire. And it burned all night long. And the next morning, my daddy put all of us boys, me and my cousins, in a flat bottom boat, and him and my uncle took us to the other side, and we took buckets because he wanted to go over there and put out the rest of that fire. And the one thing that stuck in my mind walking around that burnt pile trying to put the rest of it out was seeing all those burnt animals and stuff that had been living in there. There was like little groundhogs and rabbits, and it just stuck with me seeing those animals that didn't make it. And it's not something I'll ever forget. And as a kid, it kind of does something to you. You know, I think as an adult it wouldn't bother me as bad as it did, but I'll always remember that. Another memory I have, when I was very young, we lived in a place called Pumpkin Holler in Rogers, Arkansas. It was in the edge of the country, and the highway was up here, the main road. I can't say highway then, but the main road was up here, and you had to turn, and you had to go across the field, and you had to go down a hill, and when you got to the bottom of the hill, the driveway curved and went up to the house, which is probably about 300 foot driveway. And when you come off that hill, as you turn, they cleared all that out, and that's where my mom and dad had their chicken house, and that's where we had all the chickens. Well, my dad's sister, my aunt, her name was Alberta, we called her Birdie, and her husband, Cecil, they'd come to our house, and the women and the kids stayed home. My dad and my uncle Cecil would go hunting. Well, one day we didn't have any meat in the house at all, so the guys decided that they were going to go hunting. So they took off hunting, and the women and the kids stayed there at the house, and it wasn't very long. About an hour, I guess, had passed, and my Aunt Birdie come running in the house saying, "Marie, Marie, come and help me, come and help me." And of course my mom thought something was wrong, so she's running out the door yelling, "You kids stay in the house." We were kids. Of course we went out on that front porch to see what was going on, and what it was, there was a groundhog down by the chicken house, and my Aunt Birdie and my mother got big rocks, and they chased that groundhog down and beat that thing in the head and killed it. They had that groundhog killed, skinned, cleaned, and cooked by the time the men got home, and the men had not caught anything. Now the men had guns, the women had rocks. The women caught a big old groundhog, the men didn't catch anything. Of course, now not a lot of people know this, but groundhog tastes just like rabbit. And you actually cook groundhog just like a rabbit. And you have to think of it like this. A groundhog is a vegetarian. So a groundhog doesn't carry any kind of diseases or anything that is harmful to a human. So groundhogs are safe to eat. Of course, most people wouldn't do it nowadays, and I'm an adult now, I wouldn't do it. But back then we did. And you just cook it just like a rabbit. It actually tastes just like a rabbit. But anyway, I always thought that was so funny that the women went out and caught the meal for that day while the men was out hunting with guns, didn't even catch a squirrel. And I remember we all used to ride in the back of a pickup truck. We'd be going down the road, 12, 13 kids in the back of that truck. Nobody thought about it. Nobody thought it was unsafe. Their parents put the young kids up front with them. The older kids rode in the back. We all went swimming and camping, and we never took tents or anything. Like I said, we slept out on, we made pallets on the ground and slept on the ground. And of a morning, our blankets would be damp from the night air. We'd hang them up and let them dry. So we'd have nice dry blankets to sleep on that night. That's how we camped. We cooked on an open stove. We had lanterns, and we slept on the ground. No tents, no gas propane stoves, none of this fancy stuff that they need today. We made it. We're adults today. We didn't come home with diseases and cuts and bruises and broken bones and murdered and all of that. We lived a simple life, and we made it. And you know, there were 7 kids in my family, and how we made a living back in the 60s and the early 70s. Living in the Ozarks, if you starved to death, it was your fault. There was plenty of hunting and wild stuff, wild berries and stuff you could live on. So if you starved back then, it was just because you was lazy. And I remember my dad used to take all of us older kids out with him, and we picked what they call poke salad. And he would fill the trunk of his car as full as he could get. You couldn't even shut it. And he'd take poke salad down to the Allen Canning Company down at Springdale, Arkansas. And we'd sell them the poke salad. And then we'd go back and we'd probably spend the whole weekend picking huckleberries, little bitty ones. Took us forever to pick those things. But those were always taken to the House of Webster there in Rogers, and we sold them blueberry or huckleberries and gooseberries and blackberries, and they made jams out of it. And that's how we got money to buy flour, beans, potatoes, stuff like that for our winter time. And my mom, she used to buy potatoes in 100-pound burlap sacks, 100 pounds at a time. And you could buy flour in 50-pound bags. And she'd buy the flour in 50-pound bags because they always had plates or cups or something. You got something free, or silverware or something. I remember it. But, you know, and pinto beans, you could buy 50-pound bags at a time. And that's what they would buy, and that's how we got through the winter time, is Dad hunting, or we bought ground beef from the neighbor, or pork, you know. Of course, back then, ground beef and stuff wasn't expensive as it is today. But, you know, if we went by today's rules, I think half of us would be probably gone or diseased by now. Getting out and digging in the dirt and living life. You can't live life sitting in the house worried if you walk outside something's going to get on you. You just can't do it. And you can't keep your kids locked up all the time. Kids need dirt. They need sunshine. They need friends. They need to be out in that fresh air. Sitting at home playing video games, it isn't good for them. And I guarantee you, when this generation gets older, there's going to be so much medical problems with them. You know, my uncle, he had 11 kids, and their oldest boy, Lonnie, used to help out, you know, with the younger kids. And I always remember whenever his mom or daddy'd say, Lonnie, help us get the kids loaded up in the car, and he'd go step outside, and you could hear him yelling, Connie, Lonnie, Ronnie, Bonnie, Mikey, Rosie, Lizzie, John, Joan, Jane, Bobby. I mean, he had those names down flat, and it just sounded like an auctioneer going across that yard. I used to love to hear him holler at them. But we'd all go stay all night with each other, and it was fun times. It really was. And the camping, you know, sleeping on the ground. You know, that reminds me one time as I got older in my early 20s, my cousin come over one time and he asked me if I want to go camping. And I said, Michael, I don't fish anymore. I don't do any of that. I did it as a kid because our parents took us. I didn't have a choice. Now I have a choice. But he talked me into it. But their rule was when we went that if you ate the fish that you cooked, if you didn't catch any fish, you didn't get any dinner. So on our way out to the lake, I stopped at Walmart and bought raw fish. And they never stopped making fun of me for that, for stopping and buying fish to take on a fishing trip. And they all caught their fish, and of course I had fish for dinner, but I didn't have to go out and catch them. But they never let me live that down, that I stopped and bought fish to take with me stopped and bought raw fish to take with me on a fishing trip. But it was fun, and I remember I wouldn't sleep out on the ground that night. I made a bed in the front seat of my car, and that's what I slept in. But I miss the old days, and we were healthier and we were happier back then. We were a lot healthier and a lot happier kids back then. And nowadays, kids are locked up, and all you hear about is shooting, killing, kids doing this and kids doing that, are not allowed to do this and not allowed to do that. You know, put your kid on a farm, throw him on a horse and say go. Your kid's going to come back a heck of a lot happier. You know, it's sad to think that those times are gone. We are the last generation of, a woman made a comment on Nona Grace, said we are the last generation of outside kids, and that's the truth. It's the truth. Guys, I have yacked and chatted and went on for so long, you're probably bored of hearing of me by now. So I'll talk to you later, and I just wanted to sit down and talk a little bit and kind of remember some things that happened in my past and things that I miss. And I hope that this brings back some memories to some of you too. See you later, guys.